Chambers Haldane Macfall was a British writer and military officer. Born in 1860 into a military family, the son of Army Doctor Surgeon Major David Chambers Macfall, he lost his mother at a young age. His father remarrying to Frances Clark in 1871, but the marriage was unhappy and Clark left Macfall's father in 1890. Macfall was educated at Sandhurst, and between 1885 and 1892 he served in the military in Jamaica and West Africa. While in Sierra Leone he developed yellow jack fever and retired from the army, becoming an avid art student, studying art in Paris. He also began writing, penning such works as Ibsen, The Man, His Art and His Significance, or Sir Henry Irving, along with fiction proper. On the outbreak of the First World War he returned to the army, eventually reaching the rank of major. Macfall was a highly regarded art critic, referred to as the Marie Corelli of art criticism. At some point he married Mabel Plumridge and died in 1928. The House of the Sorcerer was Macfall's first novel, which initially came out in Britain under the title of The Wings of Jezebel Pettifer in 1898. The American edition with the new title coming out in 1900. Interestingly enough, Macfall dedicated the book to his former stepmother, who had changed her name to Sarah Grand. The story takes place in the West Indies. It begins as a first-person narration by an officer stationed at Jamaica who is forced to deal with the wild, untamable rapscallion under his command named Boaz Bryan, who one day comes to him so that the narrator can safekeep Bryan's family timepiece to avoid the clock being smashed by Bryan's wife in another one of her rages. Meanwhile, we have to deal with the sad fate of one Hucklebuck, the rumhouse proprietor whose wife is openly strutting around town with every handsome chap that climbs off of a boat in port. He plans to run away with his old sweetheart, but then he falls victim to the sailor his wife is parading around town with in a drunken brawl. The novel's best portion follows, where the shade of Huckleback is driven from returning to his house after death with mournful litanies, and is then seen by the drunken sexton in the company of vicious baby-devouring hags and vampire beasts and evil shades hanging about a cursed tree. The sexton manages to almost get himself killed by a phantasmal steer for his troubles. The story then proceeds to narrate the further family troubles of Boaz Bryan and how his seduction by Jezebel, Huckleback's conniving widow, caused his wife and mother-in-law to seek the help of an Obeah sorcerer in order to bring about Jezebel's death, though neither of the two get exactly what they want in the end. Though the supernatural never really properly comes up again after the middle part of the book, aside from one little incident, it is still an entertaining, grim showcase of the dirt and blood-stained lives of the lower classes living about Port Royal at the end of the 19th century, being something the author was very familiar with given his lengthy discourse on the state of the place during the height of the golden age of piracy. That portion recalling the long-forgotten vices of dead rogues playing, stealing and hanging, literally, about Port Royal and the West Indies is very well written, aside from the fact it tends to go on for a bit too long. This American edition, though a good serviceable novel, seems exceedingly cut down compared to the British original, leaving out a good 100 pages before the start of the book, as well as several chapters following this edition's ending. Not having read this full edition, I can't really say anything about it. The novel was considered by novelist George Meredith as the finest of his generation, but he did opine that it ought never to have been written. It is at times an enthralling read, though one has to contend with a lot of slang dialogue, which can be a bit difficult to understand, as well as some period opinions from the writer.